Conservatives have gotten into a heated debate back and forth with one another on the internet once again, and this time it's not over some major political issue that's affecting all of our lives. It's over a calendar. You heard me correctly, a calendar. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, you better. Yeah, you better.
Guys, before we get into this video, if you'd like to support the work I'm doing on this channel, I have a Patreon. The link is in the description down below. So consider becoming a patron if you like what I do. No pressure. Now let's talk about this calendar. I thought this was an outdated thing, buying a calendar during the holidays to display in your home throughout the next year, but apparently we're still doing it. You know those sexy calendars for women? There was firefighters or police officers or baseball players, and for men you had Playboy bunnies and models. Well, we have a new Conservative Dads Real Women of America calendar for 2024, and this is the subject of the controversy. Now, for a little bit of background, this calendar was created by a beer company known as Ultra Right Beer, and the calendar is meant to feature what they deem to be the most beautiful conservative women in America. And some of these faces and bodies you will recognize. Ashley St. Clair, who's pretty prominent on X, is featured in the calendar. Kimberly Klacik, Dana Loesch, a famous right-wing gun advocate, Josie, the redheaded libertarian online, Sarah Gonzalez, Bethany Bartlett, and most notably, I think, Riley Gaines, who is a female swimmer who rose to prominence in calling out trans women being able to compete in female sports. I guess it's important to note that the photos in this calendar vary. Some of the women are fully clothed, others are in bikinis. Ashley St. Clair is featured wearing lingerie in a bathtub. So we definitely have different tiers as far as how sexual these photos are in nature, and that's where the controversy lies. Now, this calendar is marketed as a conservative dad's calendar, which we'll get to that in just a moment, but they say on the website this is meant to be a celebration of real conservative women, and that 10% of the proceeds for anybody who buys a calendar like this goes towards Riley Gaines Foundation and her fight to save and protect women's sports. So I think it's great that 10% of the proceeds are going towards women's sports, but of course people are upset about the photos. Many of the photos are sort of a new take on beer posters where women are posed in bikinis or they're putting on lipstick. Generally, you can tell that these photos are made for a male audience. And if we go by the name of the calendar, Conservative Dads, it's meant to go towards conservative fathers. That strikes me as a little strange that you would market towards that specific demographic of men. But again, I'm a realist. I know that men look at beer posters and billboards and, Playboy and all this stuff. And this is relatively tame when it comes to the spectrum of sexual content that you could be looking at. But before I give my take on the subject, let's get into some of the outrage and the people who have decided to tweet about it and make content about it so that you can feel what they're feeling. Jenna Ellis says there is no rational argument that this isn't softcore porn and intended to objectify women and sexually excite men. You may be okay with it, but at least admit the intent. The most cringe part of this entire project is that it's marketed to conservative dads. Soli says, what would you think if you walked into your husband's office and he had this calendar picture up? Abby says the conservative calendar doesn't feature any pregnant women or photos of women with their kids because it was never actually about real women or conservative values. Just sex appeal. Featuring married women marketed to dads. We all know it. Enough gaslighting. Lastly, Bryson Gray says the fact that conservatives made a calendar with half-naked women then decided to put Christian imagery in the photos is demonic. And this is in reference to one of the photos where Josie, the redheaded libertarian, is in the kitchen in a little mini dress with an apron holding a pie, and in the background you can see a crucifix. And of course, with everybody getting upset about this calendar, there came the people who wanted to defend the calendar and the women who decided to pose for it. Silly Bobby says, considering this won't just die down and go away, I guess I'll chime in. A calendar with women in bikinis and dresses is not soft porn. It's absolutely absurd to call it such, and it makes you look incredibly stupid. Natalie says, this is tame AF. You guys never grew up with a mechanic for a father, spending your childhood hanging out in car shops, and it shows. Beautiful pics, tastefully done. And lastly, Kimberly Klacik, who was featured in the calendar herself, says, conservative dads is a part of the brand name. Seth is a conservative dad. His beer company is Ultra Right. We get it. You don't like it. Not a single woman in the calendar, including me, cares. Move on. I'm sick of people tagging me in your meltdown. Now, first things first, I do think drama over a calendar is absolutely ridiculous, but I guess we'll get into a deeper debate over what conservative really means, whether or not it's hypocritical for women to be featured in a calendar like this, and what it says about conservative dads that would be willing to buy this. I do think there's a clear distinction that needs to be drawn in being politically conservative versus being socially socially conservative. There are many people who politically vote for right-wing politicians or right-leaning ideology, while in their personal social lives, they don't really take on conservative values like that of modesty, which is at the forefront of this debate. Now, if you are a social conservative who talks about things like modesty and maintaining innocence and not wanting women to be promiscuous or displaying themselves for male attention, then this calendar probably isn't for you, especially if you are one of the women modeling in it. And while I do think this calendar is quite tame, considering you can see a woman in a bikini by just going to the beach or a pool, I do think there's something to be said about being a bit of a hypocrite if you're going to pose in this. Now, this does not make all the women featured in this calendar hypocrites. I want to be very clear in saying that. It's just to say, if you are a conservative woman who on the internet talks about 304s or modern women these days and how they're so slutty and promiscuous, and then you decide to put on lingerie and pose in a bathtub or throw on a bikini and pose sexually for men, then you might not have much to say about modern women these days, considering you are engaging in some of the very same behavior. I am very much a realist. I don't view this calendar to be softcore porn. I do think that is quite an extreme characterization here, but I'm also going to be honest in who the target demographic is of this calendar and why that target demographic would be buying it. You are not going to see a woman go purchase this calendar and saying, "Oh, these are such beautiful, tasteful photos, and I just like to look at a beautiful woman every month when I change the paper." Of course, it's going to be men buying this, and they're buying it because they think you're hot and they want to look at your body. And if you pose for a calendar like this, I hope that you recognize that that is who is buying it. And honestly, it's none of my business. If a dad purchases this and his wife's okay with it, who cares? If a woman's posing in this and she's okay with it, I don't care. What I don't want, though, is people hopping on the internet and saying, "Modern women these days are so disgusting in their promiscuous behavior," when they know they've done this. And we could debate back and forth as to whether or not this is immoral or whether or not it constitutes softcore porn, or even go as far as to say it's demonic, as some very interesting Christians have speculated on the internet. But all in all, here's the truth. I think there are men who like to look at hot women, and sometimes, yes, those men are married and they are conservative and they are dads, and they will still choose to look at hot women if given the opportunity. I think women in general want male attention, whether they choose to admit that to themselves or not. And I think the women who have posed for this calendar have decided, hey, I'm going to give into that feeling, that temptation towards wanting male attention, and put on some lingerie and pose in a bathtub, or throw on a bikini and pose by the pool. I think we'd be kidding ourselves if we did not think that that was the intent of this calendar. But because I am aware of female and male nature, none of this bothers me, so long as you are not choosing to be a hypocrite on the internet. Now, I'm not going to get into the religious aspects of this calendar. I'll leave that to people who truly believe or truly care about the ins and outs of religion and its feature in this calendar. But what I will say, I don't think it's the most Christian thing in the world to be featured in something like this that is marketed towards a conservative dad who presumably is married with, his kids. But hey, it's not my belief system and it is not my audience. All in all, I think we could go back and forth and argue about the ins and outs of this calendar, whether or not it's moral, whether or not this is softcore porn or it isn't, or we could focus on the fact that we have bigger fish to fry, right? I think if you're a conservative who's spending time right now tweeting about this calendar and speaking about how horrible it is, or defending the calendar and defending the women in it, we could probably put the phone down and focus on more pressing issues. Trust me, there are a lot of other issues that we should be focusing on that are going to come to affect us way more than 12 photos in a 2024 calendar. But I would love to hear your thoughts on the matter. Did you see this Real Women of America calendar? Were you offended by it? Do you think it's tame? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. As always, I encourage healthy debate, so duke it out, but do so respectfully. And if you like this video, like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single time I post a video for you guys, which is every day. And I will see you next time, and not in a conservative women calendar. Bye, guys.
Yeah, you better. Yeah, you better.